Hello, and welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Emily.
And I'm Katie.
And this is our podcast where we read you Harry Potter fan fiction.
All right, so since last week we weren't drinking wine, this week we are.
Yeah, I totally forgot that we didn't drink any wine when we recorded.
Yeah, well, we were so last week we were busting out an episode, and then we went to a Mexican restaurant for dinner with our husbands,
Yes.
so...
Yes, where we drank margaritas. Well, I drank margaritas.
And I drank water. It was called extra because of my collapsible, reusable straw. Yep. I know I'm extra.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm saving those damn sea turtles. But we're drinking more Zervino's wine today. It looks like this one's called Becca Z. It is blackberry wine.
It's delicious.
So good. Anybody who didn't hate taking medicine when they were a child, you would love this.
It's really good. It kind of does taste, it's not quite cough syrupy.
It smells cough syrupy, but it tastes better than that.
Yes. So in other exciting news, we've hit 1,000 downloads.
Thank you, guys. We love you.
It's so exciting.
It's something like last night we were barely at 900, and now all of a sudden...
Yeah, it's all of a sudden we're over 1,000.
This is just amazing. I'm so excited. Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. This hobby is not just for us.
You all apparently seem to love it as well.
Which is amazing.
Or you hate it and just think we're hilarious. And either way, it's fine. You're still listening.
You're listening. We appreciate you. Rate us, subscribe, review, like us on Facebook, Through the Trapdoor 16. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter.
Tweet at us. Email us.
Tell us who you are. Where are you from?
Yeah. All right. This week we're reading Chapter 9, Oh Fudge.
I love it.
Malfoy, Ron exclaimed. I cannot believe he did that to you. Did any of the professors do anything? Harry had been so overwhelmed by all that he had found out that he'd completely forgotten how he had gotten into the whole mess to begin with. Ron reminded him that night at dinner.
I'm in Harry's boat. We read literally yesterday, last week's episode.
Yep.
I forgot.
Yep. McGonagall gave him detention with Filch for a whole month.
Dang.
He should have been expelled, Hermione pointed out. He could have killed you, Harry.
No. There was 100 teachers in the stands. And by 100, I mean probably 4.
Yeah.
But there were definitely at least 100 students. Somebody would have tried to save him.
Oh, yeah. Harry thought about it. With all that had happened, he found it hard to think about Malfoy at the moment. It almost seemed too petty. LaSalle was hurt pretty bad, Harry said at last. And it was Malfoy's fault that he had to catch me. I don't think LaSalle's going to let him get away with that. Hermione had forced Ron not to ask about what happened unless Harry had offered information first. However, he was so eager to know that he blurted out, "What happened with Professor LaSalle? Why did your scar hurt around him? He's not another Quirrell, is he?"
Oh, Ron, I love you.
Angrily, Hermione tugged on Ron's sleeve and hissed something in his ear. Harry was about to explain, but there were too many people around. "I'll explain it to you tonight," he promised.
Of course you're going to explain it to him tonight because you're freaking Harry Potter and you tell your friends literally everything.
Everything.
Except he did keep Neville's secret when he found out. So, A+ Harry. Grade A friendship right there.
Yes. But I think he, knows the difference between, what's his information to share and,
what isn't. Because he also wasn't told about Neville. He was told about Neville from, that's how we found out in book 4. That's where the pensive was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yep. The awkward silence that followed, in which they all just chewed their food, was gratefully broken by Fred and George. "We're going to get him for you, Harry," they said together, pushing Neville aside as they attempted to sit closer.
I think a month's detention with Filch is pretty fair.
No, it really
Seeing
is.
as Harry was not injured.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from, my dear twins. I do. But don't push poor Neville.
Yeah, don't push Neville out of the way. That's rude.
You're better than that.
Harry guessed what they were talking about. As much as I'd like to see Malfoy get creamed, I don't want you two getting into too much trouble. It's your last year, and I don't think your mom or dad would appreciate you getting expelled. What? They stared at him dumbfounded. Students were already leaving the table, and Harry was about to leave, too, but they just pulled him back down in his seat. What's with you, Potter? When did they ever call him Potter?
Never.
Weird.
Not even one time. Because Harry was also, like, the only one, including their own goddamn family, who bothered to figure out the difference between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, at this point, we know that Harry has funded their shop.
Yep. Anyway. What's with you, Potter? We're offering to take revenge on Malfoy, and you're just worried about us getting in trouble? Were you badly hurt out there? Bump your head, maybe? No, I didn't bump my head, Harry said irritably. His head did hurt. The event had caused him to have quite a severe headache. I just think you ought to sit back and wait to see what LaSalle does to him first before you get yourselves in trouble. Ah, yes, George said, slapping his hand down on his knee. I remember. How could I forget? He mentioned corporal punishment. Still sounds too good for Malfoy, Fred put in. Harry was not in the mood, and he stood up once again. Okay, Harry, we'll see, but what if he doesn't do anything? Harry let out a sigh. Do what you want, but I've got a headache and need to see Madame Pomfrey. On Monday morning, Harry's head was clearer, and the students had lost much of their interest in what had happened that Saturday. Ron had gone back to avoiding Harry like the plague, and seemed to be even more cantankerous as they approached Defense Against the Dark Arts. The door was closed, and the class stood waiting in the hall. Do we have a test today? Hermione said frantically, thinking of another reason to explain why the other class would still be in the room. Hush! They looked over and saw a handful of students with their ears up against the door. Harry immediately ran to join them. What's up? There's only one student in there, and the professor is chewing him out. Harry found a spot to place his ear, and to his delight, he believed that he heard Malfoy's voice. But LaSalle continued before he could be sure. Do you ever stop and consider the consequences of your actions?
That'd be a hard no if it's Malfoy. Also, it'd be a hard no if it was Harry.
True. But you don't know how much Potter gets away with. It was Malfoy. Katie's face every time I do that voice.
I love it so much.
I like how out of nowhere I get an accent.
I love it. Just like you, your face was pretty astonished when I...
True. It is a perfect Umbridge cough.
You're welcome.
I just read ahead a little bit.
Like I did yesterday.
We're not talking about him. It's you that you need to concern yourself with at this moment. My father! Your father! Oh, grow up! The Gryffindors at the door had to stifle their snickers.
I wish somebody said that to him in the canon.
Oh, yes.
Because honestly, I feel like Snape would have said it to him.
Oh, yeah. I'm really surprised he didn't.
And he would have been like, oh, your father? I'll tell your father my damn self.
Mm-hmm. I think you're old enough now, Draco, that you can stop hiding behind your father's cloak. Besides, you should consider your father. Do you think it's wise for you to be causing trouble right now? You may bring your father to Dumbledore's attention by threatening Harry. Did you ever think about that?
Oh, snap. But guess what? Lucius, he's on Dumbledore's radar.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't very quiet.
He's so not quiet.
No.
He's very obvious.
Super obvious. everyone knows.
Like, literally everyone.
Except maybe Fudge.
Because Fudge is literally less observant than Brickwall Harry.
True.
Fudge is as observant as a single brick.
That's on, like, the inside of the wall.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Harry's at least the outside of the wall. Harry might be the magical wall behind the leaky cauldron. Mildly observant, but jumps to his own conclusions.
Yep. There was no response to this. Harry held his breath, waiting for Draco to say something, but he remained silent. Then his heart skipped a beat as he thought about Dean Thomas and Seamus Finnegan listening there with him. He wondered if they understood what he had just said. "Whoa," Dean whispered. "I hope his father is called before Dumbledore. Maybe Malfoy gets expelled." Harry felt relieved. Wouldn't you want everyone to know that he's a Death Eater, Harry? Like, I feel like you're not very quiet about these things.
Right, but at the same time, do you remember, was it Dean and Seamus? So not Dean, because Dean's mother was a muggle. My mom's a muggle, my dad's a witch. But Seamus almost wasn't let back at the school because of Dumbledore preaching that Voldemort was back and that the Death Eaters were back.
That's
so
right.
I feel like if Seamus was all like, one of my professors thinks Lucius Malfoy's a Death Eater, his grandmother would be like, oh no.
And pulled him.
Come home.
Well, he wouldn't have minded seeing Lucius getting bagged for being a Death Eater. He thought that it could become dangerously complicated if Gryffindor students became involved.
Also, yeah.
Yes. A few more words were exchanged, but LaSalle and Malfoy had lowered their voices to the point he couldn't make out what they were saying. Harry backed away from the door before it opened. When Malfoy walked past, he took notice of him and gave Harry a look of complete and utter loathing.
Well, that's classic canon for Malfoy.
Knowing that Malfoy was in hot water gave Harry a spring in his step, and he felt like he needed something to celebrate. Also something that would help him to put the incident on the Quidditch field behind him. He could think of nothing better than a trip to Hogsmeade. Unfortunately, with Ron angry at him, he wouldn't have company on the trip, so he decided to ask Hermione, "Is there a trip to Hogsmeade scheduled?" She was quick to ask when he invited her to come along. "Well, no," he began slowly. "Now is not the time to sneak out, Harry." She puckered her lips into that reprimanding scowl that Harry was truly beginning to hate. "Then you can stay here with Ron," he stated before she could say more. "And I'll just ask Neville." "Ask me what?" Harry hadn't realized that Neville was seated at the table so close by, chewing on the end of his quill while staring hopelessly down at some astronomy figures. "Whether you'd like to make a trip to Hogsmeade with me this evening?" Neville dropped his quill. "You mean that?"
I love Neville.
Hermione rolled her eyes. "Of course, I want you to come," he said in a hushed tone. "We'll be going underneath my invisibility cloak." Neville's eyes widened at this. Then he looked disappointed. "So we're going to be going over there when we're not supposed to?" "But we won't get caught." Harry was starting to get a little angry. Neville opened his mouth, but quickly shut it. He was clearly struggling with what to do. The mere idea that Harry Potter had asked him to come on a forbidden trip to go to Hogsmeade under an invisibility cloak was a terrible temptation. His conscience was clearly outmatched. "Sure, Harry, I'd love to come." And with that, he slammed his book shut. "Neville," Hermione began, but Neville gave her a severe look as he went to put his books away.
P.S. Neville, if you got caught sneaking out of Hogwarts under an invisibility cloak with Harry Potter, your grandmother would be like, "That's my grandson."
Yeah. I feel like everyone would be like, "Okay, Neville. Yeah, okay. Harry, you're in trouble, but Neville, good job. Good job. We're proud of you."
Yeah, I'd be like, "Neville, very good.
"You're finally becoming a Gryffindor. We're so proud." No care. It wasn't long before Harry began to rethink his decision to have Neville accompany him, and Hermione had insisted that she had come along just in case they ran into trouble. They had decided to go through the tunnel by the Whomping Willow so they could make a concealed entrance by way of the Shrieking Shack. However, as they hurried across the lawn under the cloak, Neville slipped on the wet grass, nearly giving them away. Hermione's little shriek didn't help this any either. Harry decided to stop at Zunko's joke shop. Then they shuffled off to replenish their supply of candy. So, question, now that you've made it to Hogsmeade under the invisibility cloak, do you all of a sudden take it off, or are you purchasing things invisibly, or stealing them, or...
Also, what time is it? Because you said it was the evening. So how late are these shops open? Is it before dinner, after dinner? Are you missing dinner to go to Hogsmeade and no one's going to notice that 3 Gryffindors are just not there?
Also, why do none of the shopkeepers ever you're clearly Gryffindor students? Why?
Harry Potter is the most recognizable freaking person in the entire wizarding world next to Voldemort.
Yep.
Why is no one like, ring-a-ling-a-ling, Dumbledore, you've got a student here? Send that talking Patronus off. Somebody's got to know how to do it.
Yep.
We know Aberforth is somewhere in Hogsmeade. We know Aberforth can do it.
I'm sure at the very least someone would be like, oh, need to go send a message to Aberforth so that he can tell Dumbledore that there's students down here again, and one of them is Harry Potter.
Someone's got to have an owl. It's not a far journey. That's like a freaking text message that goes unread for 5 minutes. Someone send an owl.
Yeah, because even in the actual canon, they talk about how Fred and George will sometimes sneak out to go get Butterbeer to bring back for parties.
Right.
So
that means Madame Rosmerta or Aberforth doesn't give a fuck.
I feel like that's probably Aberforth.
It's got to be Aberforth. Because
he seems like he gives no fucks just across the board in general.
Correct.
As they wandered over to the 3 broomsticks, Neville pulled them back. Harry and Hermione jumped. You see someone? They had taken off the invisibility cloak in order to make their purchases. Oh, if I had kept reading. No, look! They looked over at the poster that Neville pointed at. Too bad Ron's not here. Harry frowned at the thought. Ron was being so stupid in his mind that he deserved to miss this. The bright orange poster had little Quidditch players darting back and forth across the words, "Come see the amazing Chudley Cannons versus Suffolk Streamers, here in Hogsmeade on the 16th of November. Game held in Hogsmeade Field. Tickets start at 10 shekels."
There's a freaking Quidditch field in Hogsmeade?
Apparently. We'll have to tell Ron when we get back, Hermione stated, taking a bite out of a caramel apple.
When did you get a caramel apple?
When they went to replenish their supply of candy.
All right.
Harry turned away from the poster. I'm freezing out here. How about a butterbeer? And he headed towards the 3 broomsticks. The 3 of them plopped down at a table off in the corner where they could see the door just in case one of the professors decided to stop by. I didn't think Hogwarts students were visiting today, Rosmerta had stopped by. She eyed them suspiciously. They're not, Harry said simply, but some of the 5th years are taking a break from studying so hard for the owls. This sounded reasonable enough. Well then, in that case, what shall I get for you? They ordered 3 butterbeers and a plate of chips with ketchup. Then they sat happily enjoying the afternoon. Hermione, though, seemed slightly perturbed that Harry had lied so easily.
So it's afternoon?
Now it's afternoon. Time change.
All right, cool.
From somewhere in the back, someone started playing a fiddle. The music was appreciated until some wizard, who had evidently had a little bit too much, began singing along, out of tune and loud. Harry had to stifle a laugh at the words of the song about a Quidditch player from Dublin who could only catch a snitch after some whiskey, but Hermione only rolled her eyes. I can't believe them, Rosmerta mumbled while clearing away some glasses. That behavior could be expected at the Hog's Head, but not at the 3 broomsticks. No shame at all, Hogwarts professors. She stormed off, leaving them curious to find out whom the singers were. One wizard sang loudly, not realizing the fiddle had stopped playing, and no one was singing with him. At once the singer was interrupted. Harry and Hermione were staring at one another, while Neville had sunk lower in his seat. "Oh, shining sickles," Harry whispered. That's an interesting swear. For the singer was clearly recognized to be the voice of LaSalle, and the one that followed, the one of Snape's. "Hello, Minister. Forgive Salazar. He normally does not get this careless, but he hasn't been well." "Severus, do not make excuses for me," LaSalle snapped. "You know what? It's a good thing you showed up here, Cornelius, because I've had a mind to tell you." "No, Sev, I'm going to say it." Carefully, Harry peered over the barrier between his booth to see a table that was in the opposite corner of the room where LaSalle stood facing Fudge, and Snape was attempting to coax him back into the seat. By the way he was teetering, it didn't seem like LaSalle was sober enough to take any advice. "I hate you, Cornelius," LaSalle spat. "I think you're a blundering, incompetent, pompous—" At this, Snape firmly grabbed him by the shoulder, but LaSalle managed to grab the table with one hand and wave his staff with the other, making Severus back off. "And I challenge you to a wizard's duel." When he stated this, he let go of the table to point at Fudge, but this caused him to teeter backwards and nearly fell into Snape's lap. Snape immediately grabbed hold of him and began to usher him out the door. "As I said, Minister, he's not well. I'm going to take him back," he said with more than a hint of anger. And Harry was glad at that moment he was not Professor LaSalle or Cornelius Fudge. Fudge seemed to catch on to Snape's mood and said nothing more. Instead, he looked around for a seat. As he approached where Harry, Hermione, and Neville sat, Harry thought it was best to grab the invisibility cloak. "Ah, Mr. Potter, too late. Fancy meeting you here." "Actually, I was just prepared to leave," he sputtered. "I've got loads of homework to do. I just need a quick word," and he blocked Harry's exit, scooting onto the bench next to him, trapping him there. "I'd rather not talk without Dumbledore." Fudge snorted. "Listen, Harry. Dumbledore's had his day when he brought down Grindelwald. He's gotten too jumpy, seeing dark wizards behind every hedge. Voldemort's back." Cringing at Harry's choice of words, Fudge then turned slightly red. "No, he's not. We've got no proof." Cedric's death wasn't enough. Harry wanted away from Fudge. It occurred to him that he had not brought his wand. A very dumb move. Why does Harry forget his wand all the time?
He never has his goddamn wand!
This seemed to make Fudge's face turn an even deeper shade of red. "We have no proof that you-know-who killed Amos Diggory's son." "Yes, we do. I was there when Voldemort used Avada Kedavra to curse him." He made a point of using Voldemort's name. It caused many in the room to look nervously their direction. "You lie. That's why I need to take you in. Get you away from Dumbledore's influence."
This has nothing to do with Dumbledore's influence, Fudge. He legitimately witnessed, technically Peter Pettigrew murder
True.
Cedric with Voldemort's wand, but he literally witnessed it.
Yep. "You're not going to take Harry anywhere," Hermione said warningly, and Harry took notice that she had not forgotten her wand. "You two better be running along," Fudge said to Hermione and Neville. "Harry will only be away for a short time. I am not." "Now, Harry, don't make this difficult." Fudge pulled out his wand. He couldn't believe what was happening. Hermione had her wand still out under the table, and by the look on her face was attempting to sort out what spell to use. "I told you I left it here," LaSalle broke the silence. He seemed somewhat more steady, but by the tone and volume of his voice, he still wasn't sober. Snape followed after him. Fudge was watching and had lowered his wand. Harry was agonizing over what to do. He was frightened of Fudge and had a bad feeling about what awaited him at the Ministry. On the other hand, what would Snape do if he saw him here in Hogsmeade without permission? Discreetly, he handed Hermione the invisibility cloak. "You and Neville get out of here. It looks like it may get sticky, and I don't want you two in trouble on account of me." He didn't need to tell her all of it, for as soon as he handed her the cloak, she nudged Neville. "Well, Mr. Fudge, I think Neville and I will be leaving." Fudge didn't even acknowledge them as they snuck out. The Snapes had his full attention. LaSalle had snatched up a leather satchel that he had left on the booth. Snape looked impatient. "Severus, are you sure that you don't want to try out any of that port?" LaSalle had turned around and was holding a glass, but spotted something that made him drop it. "Oh, no, you don't," he growled and stormed over to where Harry and Fudge sat. "Harry, Fudge isn't trying to get you to go to the ministry, is he?" Snape followed over and gave Harry one of the nastiest looks, but turned his attention to Fudge. "Shut up, Salazar, you're drunk," Fudge snapped. "That I may be," LaSalle agreed, "but I could never drink enough to make me forget the questioning you gave Severus when you took him to the ministry. I said shut up." LaSalle turned to Snape. "He's trying to take Harry to the ministry. I say we take him out behind the Hog's Head and—" But Snape would have none of it and gave LaSalle a look that said, "Be quiet." More than any words could ever do. "Mr. Potter," Snape said it in a very soft but not to be reckoned with tone, "come here." Harry did not delay for a minute and quickly slid out of the booth and went to stand behind the Snapes. But Professor Snape had turned and was guiding LaSalle out the door. Harry left without a word being spoken. How did Harry get out? Did he, climb over the table?
He clearly just followed them.
Yeah, but didn't Fudge, slide into the booth next to Harry, pinning him in?
Yeah, but I feel like he was pinned in because Neville and Hermione were also in the booth with him. So I feel like it was him and either Neville or Hermione were sitting on the same side of the booth.
Oh.
And he slid in, so then he's like, fuck, now I'm in the middle. And then it was all oh, good, they left. So now he's like, whoop.
Okay.
Or he, was standing in front of Harry's side of the booth. And then once the Snapes came over and were talking to him, he, kind of diverted his attention and turned his body just enough for him to go and, wiggle out behind him. Because he is only 15 years old at this point.
Yes.
And Fudge is, we know, a portly gentleman.
Yes. All right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the trap door.
Please leave us a review on Facebook or iTunes. It would literally mean the world to us.
It really would.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Through the Trapdoor 16 or on Twitter at The Trapdoor.
And please send us an email at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com with any story suggestions. And as always, join us again next Saturday as we travel through the trapdoor.